In our headlines on this Tuesday afternoon, May 23rd, here in South Korea. Preparations are well underway for Korea's third space launch, which is scheduled to take place tomorrow, that is Wednesday evening, with the mission of carrying 8 actual payloads into orbit. And President Yoon Suk-yeol says the priorities within Seoul's broader foreign policy are deterring threats posed by Pyongyang and fostering economic security amid a climate of geopolitical uncertainty. Meanwhile, Seoul's team of inspectors is conducting an on-site survey in Fukushima amid Pyongyang's planned discharge of radioactive wastewater starting this summer that is raising much regional concern. Korea's Nuri space rocket is counting down precisely 1 day to its third launch into orbit, and this time with an actual mission. Now, that being said, my colleague Lee Kyung-eun is currently at the site of Wednesday's event and files this report.
At 6:24 p.m. May 24th, Nuri is set to blast off into space once again, this time on his first operational mission with his first real payload on board. And the final preparations are now underway at Aerospace Center in Goheung, the country's southern tip. At 7:20 a.m., it was rolled down from the assembly center. That's where since early this month, the third stage of the Nuri rocket was loaded with 8 satellites. This was then coupled to the first and second stage segments, completing the assembly of the 3-stage rocket. Nuri was then transported to the launch site via a specially designed non-vibrating transporter. The 1.5-kilometer distance took more than an hour, moving slower than walking speed to minimize any vibrations affecting the rocket. It was then erected and will later be connected with the umbilical tower, which will be injecting fuel and oxygen into the rocket right before blast off. But Nuri still needs final checkups on the weather and other aspects of the operation before the Korea Aerospace Research Institute decides on go or no go. That announcement will be made by 2 p.m. on the launch date. If everything goes as planned, Nuri will go into the last 10 minutes of automated pre-launch operation. This is when Nuri will be out of human hands and will start counting down on its own. If there's any change of time of more than 30 minutes from the 6:24 planned liftoff time, the launch will be postponed to a new date between the 25th and the 31st at the same time. The success of this launch depends on whether Nuri completes its mission, putting the 8 satellites into orbit. The whole process is expected to take 923 seconds. The official confirmation of success will be made at around 8 p.m. Yoon, Arirang News, Goheung.
Now, as we wait in anticipation for Nuri's third blast-off scheduled for tomorrow, our Kim Jong-sil takes a look back at Korea's 30-year journey to building its first own, that is, space launch vehicle. Do take a look.
It all began in 1993 when South Korea's first science rocket was launched. Founding member and former president of the Korea Aerospace Research Institute looks back on that moment 30 years ago.
I think it was a very important launch because it was the first step for the Korea Aerospace Research Institute to develop a rocket that would be used in space research. We had a mere 20 members on the team, and when it was put together and launched successfully, we were all thrilled and excited. I can still feel that moment like it was yesterday.
And 9 years later, the first liquid propulsion rocket was launched. As the rockets got bigger, the need to make the engine liquid was vital as it allows delicate control of the thrust, and another important reason.
The solid rocket can be easily transferred to the military purpose. So obviously, this may cause some international conflict of interest. So in order to avoid that kind of international situation, Korea decided to develop liquid rocket engine.
In 2013, South Korea's first satellite launch vehicle, NATO, went up into space. It was jointly developed by South Korea and Russia.
When we were developing the KSR-3, North Korea tried to launch a satellite using its Taepodong-1 technology. It failed, of course, but back then, the South Korean government also wanted to launch a satellite as soon as possible. So we needed the help of other countries. Russia, in this case, provided us the first stage rocket, while South Korea developed the second stage rocket.
The successful launch of Naro paved the way for Nuri, a space launch vehicle that's 100% South Korean technology. Not only is the rocket made in Korea, but the satellites are Korean as well.
And the Nuri now carries 8 satellites for practical application, such as ground observation or constellation mission and so on. So the third launch will be the first real-world application for the Nuri.
Fewer than 10 countries in the world have this technology, and South Korea hopes that Nuri's journey will be a stepping stone for South Korea to secure a global leading edge in space exploration. 김정실, Arirang News.
Up next, our Lee Soo-jin touches upon the potential commercial gains of the growing space industry as Korea seeks a firm foothold in the global market.
South Korea's aerospace sector may soon emerge as a new money-making business. The third launch of the Nuri rocket on May 24th includes participation from the private sector, including from Hanwha Aerospace. The private company was selected to receive a so-called technology transfer as part of the government's efforts to bolster the domestic aerospace industry. Hanwha will now receive a technology boost from the government, which is expected to spur further participation from the private sector, ushering in a new and more lucrative aerospace industry in South Korea. The global aerospace industry is expected to continue expanding with a predicted value of $1 trillion in 2040. An increase in investment in domestic aerospace companies will boost R&D, leading to a plethora of economic benefits.
The aerospace industry encompasses all industries related to space exploration, such as the construction and operation of launch vehicles and satellites, as well as the development and supply of satellite services, therefore having significant added economic value.
There are already domestic startups in the aerospace industry that have begun to develop their own space technology. Domestic rocket startup Aerospace became the first private company in the country to successfully launch a rocket. Video footage shows Aerospace's own suborbital rocket lifting off from Brazil on March 19. The increase in homegrown space technology will help reduce astronomical costs and barriers to entry into the space industry. On the day of the launch, stock prices of companies in related industries such as Korea Aerospace Industries closed up 2.46%, despite the nation's main Kospi bourse ending down 0.69%. Investment options in the private aerospace sector are also becoming diversified. Hanwha Asset Management offers the only ETF in the nation that invests in domestic space companies.
Nuri rocket's third launch is expected to lead to the participation of more private companies in the space industry, with more developing their own satellites, marking the beginning of a domestic space industry led by private companies.
As more private companies partake in aerospace R&D, space services and technologies may become commercialized, creating more added value for the economy as a whole. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
The priorities within Seoul's foreign policy are deterring threats posed by Pyongyang and fostering economic security. Remarks to this end were shared by President Yoon Suk-yeol at a cabinet meeting earlier on this Tuesday morning, following a flurry of diplomatic engagements that began last week. President Yoon partook in 11 sessions of bilateral summits, including those with the leaders of the G7 as well as Ukraine. Talks included condemnation of North Korea's hostile ambitions and intentions to upgrade trilateral efforts among Seoul, Tokyo and Washington regarding Pyongyang and broader regional security. President also underscored market diversification for South Korea, while promising active and responsible diplomacy to tackle global challenges such as climate change and public health. And back on Monday, President Yoon Suk-yeol and his European Union counterparts Ursula von der Leyen and Charles Michel agreed to advance joint ventures in key sectors, including that of green technology. Our top office correspondent Kim Do-yeon reports.
President Yoon Suk-yeol hosted European Council President Charles Michel and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen for a summit in what was his final event of this Super Week of Diplomacy on Monday. And among his top priorities for improving bilateral relations, he saw the need to expand cooperation in 3 specific fields.
첫째, 우리는 그린, 보건, 디지털 분야 3대 파트너십을 강화해 나가기로 했습니다. 한 EU 그린 파트너십 체결을 통해 포괄적 기후 환경 분야 협력을 확대하기로 하였으며 한 EU 보건 비상 대비 대응에 대한 행정 약정 체결을 통해 글로벌 보건 위기 대응을 위한 공조 체제를 확립했습니다.
Our new green partnership will boost cooperation in areas like renewables and green technology. Importantly, through this partnership, we will strengthen our cooperation on the safe operation of nuclear power, among other issues.
This is the first time in 11 years for both European Council and Commission presidents to visit Seoul for a bilateral meeting. And this comes as the two sides celebrate the 60th anniversary of their diplomatic ties, which have been a strategic partnership since 2010. According to the joint statement released following the summit, an agreement was made on opening talks for South Korea to take part in the Horizon Europe Research and Innovation Program. This is an EU member program for advancing science and technology with a budget of more than $100 billion until 2027. Also discussed was security, specifically Russia's invasion of Ukraine and North Korea's missile and nuclear provocations, issues that South Korea and the EU have to deal with due to their proximity to those threats. Both sides reiterated the need for cooperation with a strategic dialogue at foreign ministerial level established to enhance cooperation on global peace and security. In the meantime, the Council President acknowledged South Korea's role in global affairs so far.
In a world profoundly shaken by Russia's war on aggression in Ukraine, Russia's blatant violation of the UN Charter and the international law, you condemned this war of aggression from the start. It is all to your credit, and it shows once again the strength of our bond.
The summit was followed by dinner where the European leaders were treated to Korean-style beef ribs. There, the 60th year of bilateral diplomacy was celebrated while toasting solidarity in freedom, peace, and prosperity. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Also, this past Monday here in Seoul, the Foreign Ministry hosted a director-level meeting with a visiting Chinese delegation, which marks the first face-to-face diplomatic exchange since last January. Choi Young-jun, the director of the ministry's Northeast Asia Bureau, sat down with his Chinese counterpart Yu Jin-shung. Choi stressed the need for the pursuit of a mature relationship based on mutual trust, mutual respect, that is, while Ryu, for his part, is reported to have conveyed China's firm stance on matters of its national interest. Now, pundits believe the matters in question are related to remarks by President Yoon Suk-yeol regarding Taiwan during an interview with Reuters last month, during which he claimed tensions around Taiwan were due to attempts to change the status quo by force, which he opposed. In neighboring Japan, Korean officials are in Fukushima today for an on-site inspection, survey that would be, of Japan's efforts ahead of its planned discharge of radioactive wastewater from its crippled nuclear power plant located in the region. Our Shin Ha-young has more.
A team of 21 South Korean experts arrived at the Fukushima nuclear power plant on Tuesday for inspections at the site. This comes amid lingering concerns about the safety of the wastewater from the crippled plant ahead of its planned release into the sea. The inspection team will be at the site for 2 days, with day one focusing on examining the so-called ALPS purification system that removes radioactive substances from the contaminated water before it's released into the ocean. The so-called K4 storage tanks are also on the list for inspection. These tanks store and measure the concentration of radioactive substances in the contaminated water. The team will reportedly speak to the press on Tuesday at around 7 p.m. local time, where they'll provide some details of the inspection. On Wednesday, the team will visit a chemistry research lab at the plant to assess the facilities and the processes used to determine the amount of radionuclides in the wastewater. Ahead of the inspection, the team held a meeting on Monday with officials from the Tokyo Electric Power Company, which runs the Fukushima Power Plant, and officials from Japan's Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, as well as members of the Nuclear Regulation Authority. During the meeting, the South Korean team reaffirmed the list of facilities requiring inspection. It also requested inspection records of each facility and data on the contaminated water before and after filtration through the ALPS system. After completing the 2-day on-site inspection in Fukushima, the team is scheduled to hold a more in-depth meeting with Japanese officials in Tokyo on the last day, May 25th, ahead of their return. Meanwhile, at a press conference in Tokyo on Tuesday, Japan's Chief Cabinet Secretary Hirokatsu Matsuno said Japan will make efforts to increase South Korea's understanding of the safety of the wastewater through this inspection. 신하영, Arirang News.
In other news, an operation against reported terrorism has been put into motion in a border city in Russia amid an anti-Putin campaign by a group of Russian nationals. Our Lee Seung-jae reports.
A group of anti-Putin Russian nationals has claimed responsibility for an attack in Russia's southwestern city of Belgorod, prompting the region's governor to launch an anti-terrorist operation to hunt down those responsible for the attack.
The current situation is that 8 people were injured. According to information from the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Defense, there were no civilian casualties. Once again, the situation is tense and remains so. A counter-terrorist operation was declared. Many restrictions are in place.
The Russian governor added that a large part of the local population had evacuated the area. Moscow has placed the blame on Ukraine, claiming that the group of Russian nationals has aligned itself with the Ukrainian army. However, while Ukraine does acknowledge that Russian citizens in 2 separate paramilitary groups had carried out an operation in the area, it acted independently and without any orders from Kyiv. The groups, who call themselves the Freedom of Russia Legion and the Russian Volunteer Corps, said in a Telegram post that they had liberated a settlement in the Belgorod region. Russian authorities are still searching for those responsible for the attack, which led to 8 people being injured after a village was shelled. Fighting also damaged 3 houses and a local administrative building. According to CNN, the event in Belgorod marks the first time that Ukrainian aligned forces have launched a cross-border land operation against Russian targets. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Back on the local front, inflation prospects plunged to their lowest in a year this May, easing for the 3rd month in a row. According to the Bank of Korea, consumers expect an inflation rate of 3.5% over the next 12 months, down 0.2 percentage points on month. The central bank is linking the ease in inflation expectations to last month's drop in the consumer price index, which fell to the 3% range. Moreover, the composite consumer sentiment index was up some 3 points to 98, the highest in a year. Korea appears to be dominating the global TV market despite the current doldrums. According to market research firm Omdia on Tuesday, global shipments of TVs in the first quarter sank by more than 5% on year to just over 46 million TVs. Now, this is the lowest for the first quarter since the year 2009. Also, the value of these shipments shrank by nearly 13% to just under $22.5 billion. Despite the sluggish trade, Samsung Electronics ranked first in sales with a market share of over 32%, followed by LG Electronics in second place. Samsung Electronics accounted for more than 50% of the premium TV market in North America and Europe, while LG ranked first in OLED screens with a market share of nearly 60%. Over in Argentina, Korea's under-20 World Cup, that is World Cup team, marked its debut on the field with a 2-1 victory over France. Led by coach Kim In-jung, team captain Lee Seung-won scored first and then offered an assist to forward Lee Young-jun, who also found the net. France later responded with a penalty goal. The South Korean team now shares the top standing in Group F with Gambia, who beat Honduras. Korea plays Honduras on Friday at 6 a.m. Korea time.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. We begin in the tech sector as Facebook parent company Meta has been handed a record fine of up to $1.3 billion by the European Union for violating data privacy rules. Announced by Ireland's Data Protection Commission on Monday local time, the fine comes after it was found that Meta continued to transfer data from its EU users to its US-based servers. This despite a court ruling in 2020 that invalidated a previous EU-US data transfer pact. The fine includes an order that Meta's Facebook platform stops sending EU users data to the US within the next 5 months. The fine tops the previous record EU privacy fine of over $800 million handed to Amazon in 2021. Meta says the fine is unjustified and unnecessary, and that it sets a dangerous precedent. Switching our focus to space now, as Saudi Arabia's first female astronaut has just boarded the International Space Station. Rihanna Barnawi, a breast cancer researcher and the first Arab woman to go to space, was welcomed aboard the space station by 7 other astronauts already stationed there. Also on her flight to the ISS were fellow Saudi Ali Arkhani, former NASA astronaut Peggy Whitson, and Tennessee businessman John Schaffner. They took a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket from Cape Canaveral as part of a private mission organized by Axiom Space. During their time on the ISS, both Banawi and Al-Khani will run over a dozen experiments, including research into cancer and how to generate artificial rain on potential sediments on the Moon and Mars. And finally, Lego has unveiled a life-sized Ferrari made using its signature plastic pieces. The Ferrari Monza SP1 was built in the Czech Republic, with Ferrari designers lending a helping hand. Over 383,000 Lego bricks were used, and the model is now on permanent display at Legoland Billund in Denmark. It took 339 days to complete the model, which weighs over 1,000 kilos. The only non-Lego components used were Ferrari wheels and a steering wheel. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Air quality in central regions has improved, but those in the south and Jeju are still exposed to unsafe levels of yellow dust air pollution, with a dust advisory still in place, although things should improve as the day goes on today. Now, those in southern provinces are having much warmer daytime highs, going up 2 to 7 degrees higher than yesterday afternoon, and the rest of the central regions are as warm as yesterday. But due to atmospheric instability, rain clouds will be formed, dropping unexpected rain in inland areas, with 5 to 20 millimeters expected, along with thunder and lightning at times. But it should remain sunny most of the day with strong UV rays. Meanwhile, weather conditions in Gohung in Jeollanam-do province, where South Korea's first homegrown space rocket Nuri will take off tomorrow evening, is forecast to have promising weather on Wednesday. Now, hot and sunny weather continues through Thursday, so please take care. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
And those are the headlines at this hour. We have our panel session coming up right after this break, so do stay with us.